Black Men Cry Too is an invitation for men of color to feel safe to unpack their hurt and share their truth. This space was created as an invitation for men of color to feel empowered to know it's okay that they can cry too.
Listen, y'all, if y'all don't know about Manscaped yet, you bugging. They got all the products from the ball deodorant to the foot spray. They try and get us right. You know what I'm saying? Women don't like when you funky. So get it right, cop up on your Manscaped products, and I promise you, your balls will thank you.
On this episode of Black Men Cry Too, I'm still chilling in the 215, and to the left of me, I am blessed to sit down with Mr. Will. Will, thank you so much for sitting down.
What's up, Kat? Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here.
I appreciate that. Now, per usual, we gotta start it off with a shot.
That's what we doing. That's what we doing.
It is.
Cheers. Ooh, that's a good John.
Yeah, it's a strong one too.
It's a good John.
Whew. So,
Yes.
to kick it off, a big focus that we've been seeing this year, and it's sort of like a trend, is our community learning about generational wealth.
Yes.
Why do you think that's so important for us to learn now as well as at a younger age? Because for many of us, we didn't understand that importance or know what that even meant.
Straight up. Man, that's a great question. And I think, I kind of want to answer it in two ways. I think one, generational wealth is important to think about in general, because right now we're watching a lot of social unrest, right? There's a lot of things happening. We could talk about from, the killings of, unfortunately, Breonna Taylor, George Floyd. We can talk about just, income inequality. We could talk about mass incarceration. We could talk about all of these things, and there's so many more. But for me, I personally believe that a lot of these things are, for real, economic issues with social consequences.
Oh.
Right? So I think what happens to us when we talk about the school to prison pipeline, right? For example, just to take one of them, that wouldn't look the same if we had the capital and the wealth to be able to actually use our voices, right, to make decisions, and then use our economic power to change policy, right? If we had, folks around us in our communities that had bread, we wouldn't be seeing folks get put out on the street, right? And then have to figure out how to survive in all these different ways. So for real, I think a lot of the social issues that we see coming are really, a cloak or the top layer of what happens when you don't have that economic infrastructure. And the reason I think it's important for folks to talk and think about generational wealth early is because the more I've learned about money, I studied economics, so I got to learn a bit about that in school, and then just out here figuring it out, on my own now as a young entrepreneur. Wealth is really a long-term game, right? So the earlier you start thinking about it and the earlier you understand what's possible for you, the better, right? If we talk about, compound interest, you could be putting away money now, right? You're putting away, $500 a month, yada, yada, yada for X amount of years, 20, 40, 50 years from now. That little bit of money you feel like right now is turning into hundreds of thousands of dollars and millions of dollars because of the law and the principle of compound interest. So that's why it's important to start early. And I think also if you start early, you can build the habits, right? Because if you never had financial literacy, you never had financial training, you wouldn't realize that certain habits you could build now can just set you up for success later if you're not used to it. So it's just get that to be a part of who you are, a way of thinking, ownership is important, and a way of thinking right off rip, I'm gonna make money, I'm gonna invest, and then I'll spend what's left, as opposed to,
Spend it all now.
Right, we get out there, make money, spend, and then I'm gonna save what's left. It's nah, but you could be more intentional about that. So that's why I think it's important for us to figure it out young, because for real, I was talking to a homie recently who was saying there's people out here who are having dinner table conversations about wealth and buying property and ownership. And he's like, for real, where I'm from, we don't even have dinner tables.
And I was going to bring that up in a sense because it seems like within our community, because we come from a lot of people without having growing up, that once they have, they want to spend because they want to make up for what they weren't able to have.
Straight up.
And then they don't realize the buying power that we have and the buying power that we're essentially giving up by just using on material and not investing ahead of time and then trying to figure it out later. Yeah,
and you hit it on the head. Like that comes from, when you go without for so long and you're not used to having it, two things happen. One, you have it, you're so excited. So you're like, let me do all the things that I'd have seen people doing when they got it, right? But also it's like, when you're coming up and you aspire for more, sometimes people are spending money to look rich, as opposed to actually spending, and doing the things that are gonna help you actually get rich. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of that. And I think the biggest trap is as you make more money, you just keep upping the lifestyle, right? So how is it, that we can figure out all these strategies to build wealth and hold out long enough, on the lifestyle side that we can actually see that wealth grow. And then, of course, take care of yourself, do the things you need to do the things that make you feel good. Just do it. Put the drip in the budget. You know what I'm saying? So then that
drip in the budget. Someone hashtag that.
You got to do that. Like put it in the budget. So then that way it's not killing you and taking away from the long-term goals.
Why do you think we weren't taught that coming up?
How real do you want me to get about this?
As real as you want to get.
All right. Excuse me. The reason we weren't taught that is because the system in the country we live in was predicated on there being haves and have-nots. Right? Like, keep it a buck. I had a OG. I was at a panel one time. Her name's Pamela Jolly, a brilliant woman. She said, yo, if we're going to be honest about the country we live in, we're the only people in this country who were wealth before there was wealth. Like, we literally came over on a boat on a balance sheet, right? When black people got to this country, we were assets, right? We were literally just a piece of property that could help someone else build and protect their wealth. So for us, building wealth and building businesses is honestly, it's not even something I think we should think about as like a nice to have. It's almost like our obligation is to understand that we need to take back that economic power for ourselves. So when we talk about the public school system, when we talk about, just schooling in general, they didn't design that for us to come from the lower class and then understand how to overthrow the oppressor. They designed that for us to know enough to then be able to work in those factories. You know what I mean? That's why the Bell system is what it is. That's why they teaching you just, memorize and then regurgitate and then it's over. They don't teach us how to critically think. They don't teach us how to, understand property rights. They don't even teach us about taxes. You know what I'm saying?
Or even owning a credit card.
Right. All these things that allow us to be able to fall into the trap to pay more taxes than what Donald Trump, a billionaire, pays, right? Like, so that's the reason. And now that we know that, it's important for folks that have had the privilege to get some education to share it. You know what I'm saying? Because for real, success and wealth is a team sport, and it takes that level of group economics for us to be able to do it together.
I like how you said that success and wealth is a team sport.
Straight up.
With that, and when you had mentioned, the fact that we basically built this country and this country is built on our backs.
Without a doubt.
It brings me into the idea of appropriation and culture appropriation. And that's another heavy topic that we've been talking about a lot recently and calling them out and not letting it be okay. Why do you think cultural appropriation is so detrimental to the Black community? And why do you think we also allow it to happen?
Ooh, wow, that's a really nuanced thing right there. There's so many layers to that, but I think to answer the second part of that first, why we allow it is, and I think, just for anyone, if we're going to just talk about it, I think the record industry is the best example, right? Where we create culture. Culture is inherently value. As Black people, as people of color, we literally can create value out of thin air, use this to then make something that can, become a cultural phenomenon, a song, a dance, a meme, right? That creates so much value for so many people. But the challenge was always the people who are creating the culture, us, were not the same people who are responsible for distributing and monetizing and valuing the culture.
Gatekeepers.
Right? So with that discrepancy, they made all the money, they told us what it was worth, right? And I think, when I think about a young kid from Philly who, let's say, wants his whole life to grow up to get the record deal, why would we allow that appropriation? It's like you're taking somebody who's never had nothing and they've had this goal So it's like when they feel like it's so close to taste it and someone offers you $1 million, it's really hard to turn that up when you turn that away, when you know the situation your mom's in, you know the situation your family's in, and you know that that could be life-changing. You may not know that, oh, they're gonna offer me $1 million, but like Master P said, that means I'm probably worth 40 or 50 million. But you're like, yo, this could change my circumstance right now. And I don't got time to be thinking about next week, next month, holding out. So I think that's why we allow it, because in our minds, it's a necessity. In our minds, we don't know our own value, our own worth. So therefore, we're willing to trade that to someone who's going to write us a bigger check than we've ever seen, you know? But the damage of that is the ownership, right? Like the long-term equity of what that could be, you know, years down the road. Mariah Carey's still making money off This Christmas every single year, right? Like that's what it's about. Like,
we know what we're hearing.
You know what I'm saying? Like, and there's so many other examples. Like we're watching what Tyler Perry's been able to do because he was willing to take the risk to hold out for long enough to say, this is mine. You know what I mean? And then with that ownership, not only is the money play there, but the control is there. So it's like when we really own some stuff, then we have a say in how it looks, what the content and the message is, right? Because for real, like the recording industry has always been trash when it came to not only the finances, but the messaging, right? Some people say that like the whole gangster rap era of music was funded by, you know, these ideas to push certain agendas in our communities, right? Just so happens to be at the same time when the crack era is happening, right? So it's like, ownership is important because we want to be able to say, this is the art we're going to create, and we can choose to then create art that uplifts our people, you know? And I think about this idea a lot just because, one, I'm a nerd, and two, I'm in this intersection of art and economics. And there's a quote that comes up that I think is just so relevant here. There's a really great writer, his name's August Wilson, okay. And he's a playwright from Pittsburgh. Oh. And he has this quote, and he says, there always have and will be two distinct types of art. One is art that's designed for the consumption of white people, or two, art that was designed for the advancement of our people by designing the strategies for survival. Right? And he says those are the only two types of black art there is.
Wow.
Right? You're either going to make it for the white masses, or you're going to make art that literally designs our survival, right? The things that bring us joy, the things that talk about Afrofuturism, the things that talk about pushing culture forward. And you can see, right? Like when you see someone like a 6ix9ine, right? I was
about to say, when you see the sellouts or the ones that stay true, and I think of like a J. Cole, a Nipsey, a Kendrick, and how they stay behind the message and how it helps us and uplifts us. But then you think of certain ones that go mainstream.
Right. And those are what they call the industry plants. And where did they come from? Oh, he's an 18-year-old kid who doesn't know anything from this place. They gave him a bunch of money, and now he's talking about the destruction of our bodies. What a coincidence, right? But yeah, so that's how I feel about that.
I liked how you kept saying this particular word, create. And, you know, it's a word that I live by. It's a word I have tattooed. Nice. And it sort of goes into this space that has been created by you, that we're sitting in.
Word.
If you could talk a little bit about why it was important for you to open up Rec Philly.
Yeah. So the idea of Rec is really to challenge a lot of these things we've been talking about, right? Like, you know, back in 2012, 2013, I grew up navigating the industry here in Philadelphia, you know, playing this like pseudo management role for a lot of my recording artist friends and trying to figure out how we could like help them win through their art. And I realized that, one, there's this narrative for a city like Philly where like, if I want to be successful, I got to go to the New York or the LA, right?
You have to leave the city to make it.
Right? Or Atlanta these days. As if like you move to these cities and your music gets hotter. Like, no, that's not how it works, right? But I think the actual idea is like, there's people there that can help me monetize, right? Where maybe here it's different. But the reality is with the internet now, we all have the tools to build an audience, right? Build an audience of people who believe what we believe, engage them, and monetize direct to consumer, right? The people who love what I make, I can connect with them and sell it. So for me, Rec was this idea of could a better ecosystem exist for a creative person to step in and have access to all the resources they need when they need them, right? To have access to the actual strategies for what it looks like to build a profitable business around your passion? And could they have access to a like-minded group of people and a community of people to support you as you grow? And for me, I felt like, there was no place in the city for people like me. So it was all right, I either run away to another city and fulfill that narrative, or we stop and we do the work to build the system here. So we chose to do that. And what that's become over the last 5-6 years, we like to think of it as like a gym membership for artists.
Oh, I like
right?
that.
So again, you go to the gym because, they have the physical tools there, like the treadmills and the weights, right? So you can achieve your fitness goals. You also go to the gym because there's probably going to be people there who know a little bit more about what exercise routines should you do to achieve those goals, right?
And motivate you as well.
Right. And that's the third part. And people don't always talk about that, about the gym. It's like the hardest part of going to the gym is just getting there.
Yeah.
But once you're there and you see somebody putting up 300.
Or you're looking at the body that you want.
Exactly, right?
Yeah, 20 more minutes.
Right? I ain't gonna front if I see the shorty over there, I'm like, you know what? I can't quit on this set now,
Right.
But it's that social accountability. So for me, it was, how do we bring those elements to creativity? Right? Because we're just as competitive sometimes as creators, right? Mm-hmm. But we need access to those tools. We need access to the strategy, and we need that social accountability. And again, as a nerd who studied economics, back in 2013, 14, I'm watching Uber, build their business, and I'm watching Airbnb build their business. And these are companies who literally use resource sharing to connect people that needed something with the people who had what they needed at that moment, right? So when you think about Uber, they became the fastest growing transportation company and didn't need to own any cars to do it, right? Airbnb, destroying the hospitality industry, and they don't own any property.
Damn, I never thought about it.
Right? So if you apply that to entertainment, it's like, well, at what point can we help artists grow without needing to feel like we have to own the artists and their masters? So that's kind of where I was thinking, and I'm like, well, what can we build to provide that space? So now here in Philly, we have this 10,000 square foot creative space with 14 private studios, recording studios, photo studios, podcast studios. We got the co-working space for people to just pull up and get work done and connect. We have a music venue in partnership with Live Nation. We've got the retail store, but all of these things are all here specifically to make it simpler for creative people to make money doing what they love to do.
I love it. It's like a one-stop shop. And if
Exactly.
anyone's ever in Philly, you gotta check them out.
Pull up, we are here.
To check them out. With that, it's like you built this creative community,
Yep.
which I love to see. But how do we intertwine culture with community?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a brilliant question. And I think the third part I'd also want to make sure we put in there is economics, right? And I'm really optimistic because what I'm seeing now, within culture and like to the pop culture level, folks are talking about ownership and equity more, right? And like, rest in peace, Nipsey Hussle, who is just an incredible, icon, man, and I really wish he was still here with us.
I also have that tattooed, prolific.
Yeah.
I remember every morning when I see it,
that's
like,
fire.
I gotta live like Nipsey. I gotta be prolific.
Yeah, that's a good joint. In my living room in my crib, I have a Nipsey poster, and it's just that's the energy. But people like Nipsey and people like Ryan Leslie and people like Kanye now, even tweeting out his whole Universal contract. They're making sure that people are understanding this concept of like, what does it look like for Black ownership? So like, that's the important thing. And I think for us to do what you're asking is, how do we make that cool? You know what I'm saying? Because like in school, they wasn't teaching it. And if they was, it was super dry. But it's like, how do the people who are really out here carrying it, the people that the youth are looking up to, how do we make sure that they're out here doing the right things? So that way the young people, it's cooler to be a business owner than it is to be a drug addict. You know what I'm saying? And honestly, I feel like we've seen that. It went from, when I was younger watching State Prop, it was like, all right, we look up to the hustlers. Mm-hmm. And now it's like this next wave of kids, they looking up to the drug doers, right? Mm-hmm. The fiends, for lack of a better word. And I hate using that word, right? But now I feel like we're getting to a place where like young cats are looking up to people who own businesses. So I think it's just, culture has to be represented, and it's like a reflection of itself. So as we see more people like Tyler Perry, as we see more artists, that are stepping up and talking about the importance, and they can see it on a high level, I think the culture is just going to embrace that. But I'm hopeful that we'll have this almost like, I'll put it this way. I think there's a consciousness shift happening right now, right? Where folks are waking up to the reasons why we need all this. And I think for me with Rec was really built as this vehicle to drive this perspective shift from artist to creative entrepreneur. You know what I'm saying? Because it's one thing to be an artist and be like, yo, I create for me and this is what heals me and etc. But to be a real professional, to say I want to do this as a livelihood, you got to put on that creative entrepreneurship hat. And when I think more of us as people of color understand that magic we have to literally create something out of nothing and say, all right, cool, I'm going to operate like a business and I'm going to move in that way, it's a wrap.
I like how you said it's like a mindset shift. Mm-hmm. And to be an entrepreneur, you have to have a strong
yes, mostly mindset. Mental. Yep.
With that, and being that you're, basically inspiring the youth, you're being an example in the city, you're having a space in the city that the city's never seen before, so you're making those waves. What does your mental health, self-care routine look like? What does your journey look like? How do you maintain and continue every day? You're doing a lot.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a good question, because on the outside looking in, especially when you're in my line of work where you're curating events and you're hanging out with artists and you're doing all the cool things, you don't always get to peek under the hood to see what does that day-to-day look like. But for me, it's been a long journey of, mental health and really figuring it all out. Especially for me being from, the inner city here, my family's from Germantown here in Philly. So growing up, I saw a lot, you know what I mean? We see early death. We see, I got a dad who's doing a 30 to 60 right now. You know what I'm saying? I've seen people in my family battling drug addiction. So there's so much there, right? That at some point you got to unpack. And for me, when I started my journey, even doing therapy, that changed my game.
When did you start, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, no problem. So my therapy journey started, if it's 2020 now, about 2.5 years ago.
Oh, same as mine.
Word. Yeah. And before that, it was all just, I was grinding off muscle. You know what I mean? I believed in that never not working attitude.
Sleep when you're dead. Sleep
when you're dead, no days off. And I really believe that was the way, right? Which is so damaging and toxic, because it's as people of color, we have that mentality, but we also have that I have to be excellent just to get by, right? We can't be mediocre. Mm-hmm. So when you compare those two things, it's how do I be excellent all day, every day, and never sleep? It don't add up, right? And it's not sustainable. So for me, I just would try to get there off brute force, but then eventually I'm yo, these things are really just coping strategies and survival tactics that I built to survive. But at a certain point, those habits and traits are not going to serve me when it's time to really thrive, and be my best self. So I had to take a step back and say, no, I get to do this work. So, that was an introduction to therapy for me, and that was super dope. And then there's been a lot of other things in place of therapy that I've done that have also really opened my eyes to the fact that everything you need, you already have. It's just how do you start to break away all of the layers that you develop to survive and really understand them, to unlearn them, so you can set yourself up to be the best you. But I'll say all that to say, now I realize how important that is to me. So mindfulness is a big part of my life. I'm meditating every single day. I'm praying. I'm reading my Bible every day. You know what I mean? I'm doing the physical fitness. I'm running as often as I can, because that mind, body, spirit thing is real. You can't forget one of them and expect to be your best self. So for me, I'm really learning that, we get to design the routines that we know serve us. And if we really sink into that and obey it, we won't be stopped.
I love that. I really love that. That was dope. It was the holy trifecta. Mind, body, spirit.
That's real.
How do you stand comfortable in your skin and tell other Black men I'm in therapy, or today in therapy? How you just drop it so casually?
I mean, that's just doing the work, right? And I'll be the first to say, one of the things that I learned in therapy was just who I am and how I've grown up from what I've experienced. I used to have this racket of like being a people pleaser, right? I used to care so much, right, about what people thought, and I would go out of my way to make other people feel comfortable. And, you know, I used to brag about that and I don't know if you know the term code switching. Yeah, like I code switch with the best of them, right? But really, I learned that those are all just strategies that I designed to survive, right? And, you know, some of that is okay, but at the end of the day, like, you got to put yourself first, right? And you have to have that confidence in you. But, you know, it's not an easy thing, but over time, you just develop like, yo, some people gonna fuck with me and some people not. And at the end of the day, like, the people don't fuck with me, that's on them, right? It ain't got nothing to do with me. You know, most times people projecting or whatever. But that's for Black men, you know, because we're all conditioned to be like, oh yeah, like.
The word conditioned. Right,
we're conditioned to think you gotta be hard all the time, this and that. Black men don't cry, all that type of stuff. But also even for Black women too, because.
We have to be strong.
Right.
We're always resilient.
Right.
I even tweeted this year, I'm tired of being strong. Don't nobody come over here looking for no strong Black women.
Facts, right?
Just breaking down.
You know what I mean? Can we be human? Right? But even like, for example, I went on a date the other night, a first date, you know, single out here, figuring it out.
It's very hard.
Right? And it was funny, somehow therapy came up, and the young lady was like, who made you do that? And I was like, me?
Myself.
Like, right? But, you know,
healing journey?
but again, it's just something that like we've been taught that like, oh yeah, like you gotta be sick to do that. But it's like, yo, if you're gonna go to the trainer and take care of your body, why would you not find an expert to take care of your mind, right?
I love how you brought up therapy on the first date. I'm just gonna like do that now.
You gotta do that, yo.
And watch the body language, and if they tense up, I'm like, okay, no, he's not healed enough for me.
You know what I'm saying? Yo, what are your love languages? Are you in therapy? Just get right to it.
Forget the what do you do?
Right.
Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
That's secondary.
What is your love languages? Do you know your love languages? It should be the first one. Then what are yours? And are you in therapy? Then you can talk. I love that.
Thanks.
Thank you so much for sitting down and dropping a lot of gems and hella knowledge today. Appreciate you.
This has been fun. Thanks for having me.
No, I appreciate that. Now, here's my favorite question to ask.
Okay.
3 songs that you listen to get you in a mood, out of a mood,
Ooh.
angry, happy.
Ooh, this is a good one.
Yeah, it's the hardest one.
What mood we talking about? Like,
you think you could throw one out that whenever you feel sad, mad, happy, you want to celebrate because you just had another win.
Okay. Man, this is such a great question. Like, music is everything, yeah. Straight up.
No, there's a lot going through your head right now.
And I'm a nerd too, so like I love to build routines and like habits. So like I listen to the same music every day when I wake up. Like I have a morning playlist that like just gets me in the right place for the day. So one of those records I'll throw out that's on that playlist is Never Would Have Made It. You know what I'm saying? And it's
fun to that song.
Yo, that's a good job, right? You're not stopping when that come on.
Exactly. Like, you know? With tears coming down my face because I can't stop.
Yeah, and it's funny because I'll start with the Marvin Sapp version, but then it goes into the Tiana Taylor version, the new John. Yeah, so those Johns. Another John that I think I play just in moments of gratitude where I really want to be in that space. Russ has a song called Manifest. Yeah, and that's a beautiful record. And it's just talking about that power of just, you know, manifesting things into reality. And I think that's important to remember that we have that power as creators. You know, what other Johns? I mean, I'm not gonna front, you know, that new Brent Faiyaz John is on repeat OD right now. That's a whole different vibe.
He's gotta be the next one up. Like,
you feel me? What's the name of that John? Dead Man Walking, yeah. So when you know, after work is done, you know, you gotta, you know, get that other energy. That Dead Man Walking is a vibe. But yeah, that's my energy though. From the Marvin Sapp to Russ to, you know, Brent Faiyaz. That's kind of the space. Almost like
your full day.
Real talk.
You wake up in the morning, your midday, and you end the day.
Straight up.
That's a good pick.
Straight up.
And lastly, what message would you leave the youth with? It has to be different than your earlier.
Okay, I was gonna ask, what message would I leave the youth with? All right, so I'll give a similar one but different. You can. I just think it's so important for us to know that we can, and that's with anything. Like, you know, I grew up, you know, in a way where, you know, no one in my family, you know, was an entrepreneur. No one built a startup, you know, or even a business in general. So I think, you know, this whole thing is designed for us to feel like we can't or we don't have what we need to win. So I just want to, you know, throw it out there for any young Black man or woman who's out there. You can, and you already have everything you need. Just understand that independent doesn't mean alone. So you don't got to be out here and be like, oh, I'm on my grind. So it's me by myself doing this, doing that. It's like, yo,
that's important.
You know, find your tribe as early as you can with folks who truly are like-minded, that believe what you believe, that complement your skill set, right? Do the work to find the self-awareness to know what you're good at and what you're not. Surround yourself with people who complement you and y'all make each other better, and just go full force with the expectation of success.
Come on, expectation of success. Mic drop.
That's it.
And with that, I want to thank you for tuning in and watching yet another episode of Black Men Cry Too. As always, you can follow us on YouTube as well as IGTV at BlackMenCryToo, TOO. Thank you for tuning in.
We out. Peace.